Lesson 93, equations with exponents. So our first problems here, we're looking at quadratic equations, just an equation containing a variable with the highest exponent being 2. So we want to solve 2x squared plus 7 equals 25. So our goal is to figure out what does x equal. So we need to get the 2x squared by itself. So I'm going to subtract 7. It's the opposite of adding 7, and I get 2x squared equals 18. To get x squared by itself now, I divide by 2. I'm left with x squared equals 9. And then to undo a square, I find the square roots of both sides. And x would equal both a positive and a negative 3. Because when you find the square root of a number, you can get a positive and a negative root. Next one, 2x squared equals 16. Get x squared by itself, divide by 2. Left with x squared equals 8. Undo a square, I find the square root of both sides. And so now I have x equaling a positive and negative square root of 8, but I can simplify this. Square root of 4 times square root of 2. So x would equal a positive and negative 2 times the square root of 2. Next one, 2x squared minus 3 equals 29. Add 3 to both sides. I get 2x squared equals 32. To get x by itself, divide by 2. I have x squared equaling 16. To undo a square, I find the square roots. And again, when I find the square roots, I get a positive and a negative number. And that will give us positive and square root of, or positive and negative 4. Next one, I'm going to subtract 6 on both sides to get 5x squared by itself. That will give us 10. To get x by itself, x squared by itself, I divide by 5. X squared would equal a positive and negative, just a positive 2. Undo a square, find the square roots. So x would equal a positive and negative square root of 2. I can't break down 2 any further, so that's why I keep it as a radical. Next, get negative 7x squared by itself. I subtract 8 on both sides, and I get negative 7x squared equals a negative 21. To get x squared by itself, I divide by a negative 7, and I'm left with x squared equaling a positive 3. To undo a square, I find the square roots, so x would equal a positive and negative square root of 3. Next one, 8 equals 4w squared minus 24. I add 24 to both sides to get 4w by itself. And I get 32 equals 4w squared. Get w squared by itself, I divide by 4. I get 8 equals w squared. To undo a square, I find the square root of both sides. And I can break down the square root of 8, which is 4 square root of 2. So w would equal positive and negative 2 times the square root of 2. Next one, we have the two rectangles are similar. Find x by solving this proportion. So we would cross multiply. So that would give us your x squared equaling 9 times 16. And 9 times 16 gives us 144. To undo a square, find the square roots. So x would have to equal a positive and negative 12. But because we're dealing with side lengths, we can only use the positive number. So we only use positive when we're dealing with lengths or units of measurement. So the only answer that would make sense to this problem would be 12. Solve these other ones. Cross multiply. So we got x squared equaling 36. undo a square, you find the square root of both sides. And so now I would have x would equal positive and negative 6. And this one, since I had a positive and a negative, because I'm not dealing with units of measurement, I'm just using proportions, so I can have positive and negative numbers. Next one, x times x is x squared. 3 times 4 is 12. To undo a square, I find the square roots. And I can break down 12, which is the square of 4 times the square root of 3. And x can equal a positive and negative 2 times the square root of 3. And our last problem is Jamie is making a mosaic using 101-inch square tiles. If the shape of his mosaic is to be a square, about how long should each side be? So that means the area is 100 in a square. So how do I get 100? I would find the square root of 100, which give us a positive and negative 10. But because I'm dealing with area, unit of measurements, I can only have positive units of measurement, so it'd have to be 10 inches. And the last one, Yoli arranges 121 square tiles into one large square. So here's your large square, it has 121. How many tiles are along each edge of the larger square? So again, I would find the square root of 121, and that would give me 11. I can only use a positive amount because I'm finding a measurement, and I can only use positive units of measurement. So this would be 11 square tiles, or 11 tiles. That is our lesson today on equations with exponents.